They mocked the waitress until she fired the CEO in front of his colleagues. Before we go further, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this one. In the heart of Texas, where towering glass buildings split the sky and oil money mingled with old wealth, the city buzzed with the quiet arrogance of power. Deals were made over golf swings and sealed with dinner reservations, and tonight, the epicenter of it all was Verité. A restaurant so exclusive, the waiting list was rumored to stretch months. Inside, everything gleamed. The floors reflected gold, the chandeliers glittered like suspended stars, and the air itself seemed infused with quiet judgment. This wasn't where people came to eat. It was where they came to be seen. At the most prominent corner booth, beneath a wall of backlit wine bottles and contemporary art worth more than most homes, sat Richard Langford, CEO, multi-millionaire. A man whose name alone could open doors or shut down futures. His tailored suit hugged him like armor, every thread screaming custom. Around him sat his inner circle, executives, board members, industry parasites, and $1,000 ties. They laughed loud enough for everyone to hear. And standing before them was a waitress, Anna. She wore black slacks, a white blouse, and the practiced smile of someone who knew how to disappear when needed. But she wasn't disappearing tonight. Not quite. Langford didn't look at her at first. He was too busy reliving a story that ended with a junior manager quitting in tears. And I told him, he said, gesturing with a silver fork. If he wanted sympathy, he should have called his mother. The table exploded with laughter. A hollow, rehearsed sound. Anna stepped forward and poured his wine. Steady hand. Polished motion. That was when Langford glanced up. His eyes flicked over her with the dismissive curiosity of someone appraising a car he wouldn't buy. You've got precision, he said. Ever consider a real career? Something beyond tray balancing? Anna responded with a faint smile. I'm exactly where I need to be, sir. Langford cocked his head. That wasn't the answer he expected. Oh, I like this one, he said, turning to his right-hand man. Got a little spark. That's rare in the help. Laughter followed. Softer this time, but present. Anna didn't flinch. She topped off another glass and took a half-step back, silent. Langford leaned forward. Let me guess. You've got dreams. School at night, maybe? Trying to work your way up the ladder one latte at a time. She didn't answer. That only fueled him. There's nothing wrong with that, he added, voice thick with mock encouragement. We all start somewhere. Some of us just stay there. Chuckles rippled through the table like a low current. One executive, a bald man with too much cologne, joined in with, you never know. Rich, maybe she's the next CEO. That got a real laugh. Langford wiped the corner of his mouth with his napkin, smirking. Yeah, maybe she'll buy the company one day. From behind the register, Anna's eyes flicked to him briefly. Not anger, not fear, just awareness. That unsettling kind of awareness that lingers in silence. Langford caught it. He leaned back, suddenly intrigued. Tell me something, miss. What's your name? Anna. Anna, he repeated, as if testing the weight of it. You from around here? I grew up nearby, she said evenly. That explains it, he replied. Texas girls. Raised tough. Told they can be anything. Someone at the table muttered, except Rich. Langford laughed at that, louder than before. Let's be honest, he said, lifting his glass. It's a nice thought, but this world, it's not fair. It never was. Some people are born to make decisions. The rest are here to clear the plates. His eyes returned to Anna. You clear them well. Anna's voice was calm. I'll take that as a compliment. He raised a brow. It wasn't one. She held his gaze for a fraction of a second, long enough for the temperature at the table to shift, just slightly. Then she turned, moving on to the next guest with the same professional grace. Langford watched her go. Something about her bothered him now, though he couldn't quite place it. Maybe it was the lack of response. Maybe it was the composure. She didn't play the game the way the others did. Strange girl, he murmured. Strange, said one of the execs. Or smarter than she looks? Langford frowned. Either way, she knows her place. But in the kitchen, behind the double doors, Anna wasn't thinking about her place. She was remembering every name, every insult, every sneer. She moved through the stainless steel maze with silent resolve. Her shift wasn't over, not by a long shot. And neither was her role in Richard Langford's story. Not yet. The Texas skyline glittered like a mosaic of ambition and secrecy as Anna exited the back door of Verité, her shift officially over. The air was cooler now, the late evening cloaking the city in silence. She moved through the alleyway quickly, unbothered by the lingering smell of grease and spoiled wine. A passing cab slowed, but she raised a hand. No need. Her car was parked 2 blocks away. Not the beat-up sedan one might expect from a waitress scraping tips. It was a black Mercedes coupe, discreet but pristine. She unlocked it with a soft chirp, slid inside, and drove off into the night with the ease of someone used to quiet power. 20 minutes later, she stepped into an entirely different world. The elevator doors opened directly into her penthouse suite, floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist decor, and a view that swallowed the city whole. The contrast was sharp. Nothing about this space belonged to a service worker. A fireplace flickered against a marble wall. A grand piano sat untouched in the corner. On a sleek glass table rested her tools for the night. A laptop, a thick binder of financial reports, and a manila folder stamped with the Langford Holdings crest. She pulled off her heels, unpinned her braid, and walked straight to the table. No wine, no shower, no rest. There wasn't time for indulgence. She opened the folder, eyes scanning numbers, board minutes, and projected earnings. Langford Holdings was bleeding in places they hadn't even noticed yet. And Anna? She saw every leak. She pulled up a confidential email from earlier that day. Her father's name sat at the top, Walter Carrington, one of the original founders. The man who had built his fortune quietly, investing in people, not headlines. The man who had placed Langford in power years ago, back when the board needed someone loud, aggressive, untouchable. But Walter was no longer untouchable. Illness had taken the edge off his voice and slowed his hands. For months now, he'd watched the company drift toward vanity and ego, toward Langford. And in that silence, he had turned to Anna. Not the board, not the attorneys. Her. She had spent the last 6 months preparing, learning, studying the company from the inside out. Not from an office, but from the floor. Among the people Langford never noticed. Anna turned to another document. Executive salaries, bonuses, expense reports. Langford had just approved a new private jet lease while cutting healthcare benefits for mid-tier employees. It wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last unless someone stopped him. And that someone was polishing glasses at Verité 3 nights a week. Anna's fingers danced across the keyboard as she updated a document titled Control Transfer Contingency. She wasn't just taking notes. She was building a case. Every date, every decision, every recorded insult. Everything had purpose. On a side screen, a livestock tracker ticked silently. Langford Holdings. Stable. Predictable. That was the illusion. A house of cards built on arrogance, and it was trembling. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father's assistant, vital stable. He's asking about the documents. Anna replied quickly, signed and secure. Moving forward as planned. She put the phone down and walked to the window. The city pulsed below, endless, blind, loud. People chased power in boardrooms and luxury bars, while others served drinks and cleared tables. She had stood in both worlds now, felt the cold of one and the burn of the other. And Langford? He was so sure he owned the floor beneath his feet that he hadn't noticed it shifting. Anna walked back to the table, opened another report. Minutes from last quarter's executive meeting. She reread Langford's speech, full of self-praise and hollow optimism. His voice rang in her head. Some people are born to make decisions. The rest are here to clear the plates. He had no idea how wrong he was. She pulled out an envelope from the binder. Thick, sealed. Inside it, legal documents bearing her father's signature, an official transfer of voting power. A signature she had watched him write just 2 weeks ago, hands shaking, eyes clear. He had smiled at her after signing it. Don't wait for them to open the door, he had said. Kick it off the hinges. Anna slid the envelope back into its folder and locked it in the drawer. She didn't need to rehearse what came next. She had lived it, memorized it. She knew the company's structure better than most of the men on the board. She knew which allies were waiting for Langford to fail. And she knew the ones who would turn the moment the tide shifted. She wasn't here to make a scene. She was here to take the throne. Midnight passed. The city outside slowed. But Anna didn't. She printed out one last document, an internal audit no one else had access to, and marked it with a red pen. Noted the discrepancy. Another quiet nail in Langford's coffin. Another piece of a puzzle he didn't know he was part of. By the time she finally walked to her bedroom, the lights of downtown were dimming. She passed the painting above her bed, an original oil portrait of her father, younger, proud, standing in front of the first Langford Holdings headquarters before Langford had even been hired. Anna paused for just a second, not out of nostalgia, out of respect. Then she turned off the lights. Tomorrow, she'd serve Langford again. But soon, he'd learn who was really running the company. And it wouldn't be a man in a tailored suit. It would be the woman he called just a waitress. The evening rush was over. The clink of silverware and low murmur of conversations filled the air in Verité, where the city's elite came to unwind in polished luxury. But for Anna, it wasn't about serving dinner. It was about observing, learning, positioning herself. Tonight, the stakes were higher than they'd ever been. Anna moved quietly between tables, her movements fluid, calculated. She was on a mission, and as the final orders were placed, she knew exactly where she needed to be. She could hear the laughter from the corner booth. Langford, his crowd, the same faces, the same voices. It was time to engage. She approached the maitre d', her posture neutral, her tone calm but firm. "I'll take the Langford party's table again tonight." The maitre d' shot her a quick look, hesitating only a moment before nodding. "Of course, Miss Carrington. I'll make sure you're assigned." As Anna made her way to the back of the restaurant, the soft tap of her heels against the floor was the only sound cutting through the otherwise quiet atmosphere. She had studied the group before, had noted every conversation, every flicker of reaction. Langford's usual table, his usual crowd. But tonight, Anna wasn't just a waitress. Tonight, she was about to extract something far more valuable. She arrived at the booth, her presence barely noticeable at first. But when Langford looked up, his eyes narrowed. There was a moment of tension before his lips curled into a smile, polite but calculating. "Back again, Anna?" he asked, his voice dripping with condescension. Anna returned the smile, her eyes betraying none of the disdain she felt. "You asked for a refill on the wine," she said simply, placing the bottle on the table. She moved efficiently, her gaze moving over the faces around the table. The other men were absorbed in their own conversations, unaware of the shift in the dynamic. As she poured the wine, Anna's mind was already calculating. She wasn't just filling glasses. She was listening, absorbing every word. The conversation was about expansion. Langford's company had its fingers in too many pies, too many investments to count. But the discussion was undercut by tension. A junior partner, clearly out of his depth, was trying to raise a concern about the company's latest acquisition. "I'm just saying," the young man started, his voice tentative. "There's a risk involved in this deal. We need to." Langford interrupted him, cutting through his words like a blade. "There's always a risk," he said with a dismissive wave, his voice loud enough for the entire table to hear. "But we don't hesitate. We don't second-guess. We're in the business of making moves, not making excuses." Anna's gaze flicked between the junior partner and Langford. The tension in the air was palpable. Langford's power was obvious, his dominance unquestioned. He knew how to shut down dissent, how to wield influence like a weapon. He had done it before, many times. And Anna knew it would only get worse if someone didn't stop him. But Anna wasn't there to stop him yet. She was there to gather pieces, to set the stage. As Langford continued, his words veering towards self-congratulatory rhetoric, Anna's mind worked methodically. She didn't just hear the surface-level talk. She listened for the small gaps, the numbers mentioned in passing, the casual references to figures who could make or break deals, the hidden agendas tucked between the lines. She knew Langford's company inside out. She knew who was lying, who was overestimating their influence, and who was still tethered to outdated ideas. As the conversation shifted back to the acquisition, Anna took a step back, her posture still poised and attentive. Her smile was perfect, not too wide, not too distant. She wasn't just serving wine. She was serving as a subtle conduit to a larger plan. Langford continued to bask in his self-made glow, oblivious to the sharp observation taking place in front of him. He continued making his grandiose statements about his vision for the company, dismissing everyone around him with effortless superiority. His colleagues, his sycophants, nodded along, eager to stay in his good graces. And yet, there was something in Anna's demeanor. She wasn't impressed. She wasn't intimidated. Every word, every move he made, she filed away as if she were compiling a dossier. She could feel the undercurrent of his arrogance, the way it clung to him like a second skin. As she topped off Langford's glass, she caught the gaze of the junior partner, the one who had tried, and failed, to speak out earlier. He hesitated, then met her eyes. A flicker of something passed between them. He was unsure, hesitant, but his momentary glance gave her the opening she needed. "Is everything to your satisfaction, Mr. Langford?" Anna asked, her tone smooth, her voice a mask of professionalism. Langford barely spared her a glance. Yes, we're fine." But the junior partner spoke up, his voice tentative once again. "I still think we should consider the risks more carefully." "The numbers," Langford snapped at him, cutting him off in front of the entire table. "I said we're fine. We don't discuss the risks, Jonathan. We take them." There was silence. The air hung heavy. Anna watched the junior partner shrink, his shoulders sagging as Langford's words landed with a thud. She could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the way he knew he was just another pawn in Langford's game. But Anna wasn't here to be a pawn. Not anymore. She finished her task, placed the empty wine bottle back on the tray, and turned to leave. But as she did, Langford's voice followed her. "Don't let me see you here again, Anna. You're not part of the conversation." His words stung, but they didn't break her composure. Anna didn't respond. She didn't need to. She was already 5 steps ahead of him. As she walked back to the kitchen, her mind raced. She knew exactly what needed to be done. The pieces were falling into place. Langford thought he ruled the room, thought he was untouchable. But Anna had already seen the cracks. And soon, she would exploit them. The morning was quiet as Anna stepped into the law firm, carrying the legal documents that would change everything. The familiar smell of leather and ink filled the air, but today, it felt different. This wasn't just about the firm. It was about her future. She made her way to her father's office. Walter Carrington, once a force of nature, now lay bedridden, his once powerful frame reduced to a shadow of itself. He looked up at her as she entered, his eyes tired but sharp. "Everything's ready, Father," Anna said, placing the documents in front of him. There was no hesitation as he picked up the pen, his hand shaky but steady enough to sign the papers that would make her the controlling shareholder of Langford Holdings. The signature was a simple motion, but its implications were far-reaching. Her father didn't speak much, but his eyes told her everything. This was his decision, and now it was hers. With the papers signed, Anna sealed them in an envelope, the finality of the action settling in her chest. She stood up, her resolve firm. As she left the office, she glanced at her father one last time before walking out. The world outside was unchanged, but Anna knew it wouldn't be for long. Meanwhile, across town, Langford and his cronies laughed, unaware of the storm brewing. They clinked glasses, oblivious to the shift in power that had just occurred. They continued their self-congratulatory chatter, mocking those beneath them. But Anna wasn't listening. She didn't need to. She reached her car and placed the sealed envelope in her bag. It was time for the next move. She drove back to Verité, ready to confront Langford, ready to show him the power she now held. The game had shifted, and Anna was about to take control. The restaurant buzzed with energy. Verité, as always, exuded sophistication, polished wood, velvet seats, and dim lighting that set the perfect stage for the night's spectacle. Langford was at the center of it all. He gathered the most important board members and investors for an exclusive dinner to unveil a new expansion plan. But tonight was about more than business. Anna, in her usual attire, moved gracefully between the tables, her demeanor calm, precise. She was a fixture in the background, unnoticed, yet always present. But Langford noticed her. He always did. He raised a glass, his laughter loud and jarring. To new ventures, to success, and to the future of Langford Holdings. The toast was followed by applause, and the room settled into a comfortable hum. As the dinner unfolded, Langford's focus shifted from one topic to another, showcasing his latest plans for expansion, all while keeping the conversation lighthearted. Anna's movements were fluid, but each time she passed his table, his gaze followed her. His smile was sharp, condescending. "So, Anna," Langford said, his tone dripping with mockery. "Still serving drinks, huh? You've come a long way, considering your qualifications." His chuckle was loud, and a few of the board members laughed along, clearly enjoying the joke. Anna's smile remained unchanged. Her eyes never wavered from the task at hand, but inside, the tension coiled tighter. Langford couldn't help himself. He had to assert his dominance. The next jab came quickly. "You know, it's impressive, really, how someone with so little ambition can find herself working in such a prestigious place," Langford continued, his voice casual, as if the insult were an afterthought. "I mean, Just look at you. What? A degree from a community college. The table laughed again. Some chuckled nervously, others joined in with little more than a half-smile. They had learned long ago not to challenge Langford. Anna didn't flinch. Her smile was still the same, but her mind was elsewhere. The conversation shifted to the expansion plans again, but Langford wasn't done. His eyes locked onto Anna as she poured wine into a glass for one of the investors. "You must be excited to hear about the real decisions being made, Anna," he said, his voice dripping with patronization. "I'm sure you're too busy to understand the intricacies of corporate growth. Maybe when you've climbed a few more rungs on the ladder, we can have a real conversation." This time, the laughter was louder, more pointed. It echoed in Anna's ears. The investors watched, some in discomfort, others amused by the power play. Langford had them all under his thumb, but Anna's composed exterior remained unbroken. She placed the wine bottle back on the tray with a soft click. Every word Langford spoke, every glance his colleagues threw her way, only added to the weight of the moment. Her smile was no longer just a mask of politeness. It had become a weapon. Each insult fed a fire that no one could see, a fire that would soon consume them all. As she moved around the table, Langford continued his verbal assault, each remark more cutting than the last. "You're still working here, aren't you, Anna? I thought by now you'd have outgrown the apron, but I suppose you found your place." His laugh cut through the air. Some people just know their limits, right? The table grew quieter this time. The laughter had died down, replaced by an uncomfortable silence. But Langford didn't notice. He never did. Anna paused for a moment, her hand steady as she refilled a glass. The silence hung thick in the air, but her mind was sharp, calculating. She was no longer just playing the role of the invisible waitress. Tonight, she was ready to take her seat at the table. The conversation shifted once again, but the damage had been done. Langford had pushed too far. Anna could feel the weight of the envelope in her pocket, the final piece of the puzzle she had been putting together for so long. Every mockery, every subtle jab from Langford had been building to this moment. The room was thick with tension now, as if everyone sensed that something was about to change. Langford, meanwhile, was oblivious. He was too wrapped up in his own power, too focused on showing off his dominance, to realize that he had just pushed the wrong person too far. His arrogance made him blind to the threat that Anna now represented. Anna's movements were slow and deliberate as she circled the table, making her way toward the back of the room. The dinner continued without a hitch until she reached the kitchen. She paused at the door, taking a steadying breath. Behind her, the laughter and clinking glasses continued, oblivious to the storm brewing. She took a moment to compose herself, the envelope still warm against her skin. It was time. She turned back toward the dining room, stepping with the quiet grace that had earned her Langford's contempt. But now, with every step, Anna wasn't just walking into the room, she was walking into her power. The moment was near. The clinking of glasses died down as Langford raised his own, his broad smile filling the room. "To the future of Langford Holdings," he announced, his voice booming with confidence. The room echoed with polite applause, the kind reserved for corporate affairs. It was all routine for him, another milestone in his reign. Anna stood in the corner of the room, her tray empty, her hands steady. She waited. The air in the room felt dense, thick with anticipation, as if everything had already shifted and no one knew it yet. Langford took a long sip from his glass, his smug expression unbroken. He was basking in the glory of the moment, surrounded by the people who had bowed to him for years. But he didn't know it yet, his empire was about to crumble. As he set his glass down with a quiet thud, Anna stepped forward. Her footsteps were deliberate, each one calculated to draw attention. She walked slowly toward the table, where Langford and his colleagues still lingered in their celebratory haze. Without a word, she reached into her apron pocket and retrieved the sealed envelope. The room fell into an immediate hush. Langford glanced up, his eyes narrowing as he saw her approach. Anna placed the envelope on the table in front of him. No words were needed at first. The weight of the envelope was enough. She watched as his eyes flicked from the envelope to her, his expression shifting from confusion to wariness. "Mr. Langford," she said, her voice calm but carrying a quiet authority, "you're officially relieved of your duties." The words hung in the air. The room went still. Langford blinked, the smirk slowly fading from his face. He opened his mouth to respond, but the words didn't come. Executives exchanged glances, some nervous, others incredulous. There was no applause now, no laughter. just a rising tension that seemed to hold the entire room captive. "Excuse me," Langford managed, the confidence in his voice faltering. He stood up from his chair scraping loudly against the floor. His face was reddening, a mix of confusion and anger taking root. Anna didn't move. She didn't have to. Her presence in that moment was enough. She continued, her tone unwavering. "I am Anna Carrington, the daughter of Walter Carrington, the largest shareholder in Langford Holdings. And now, I am the acting chairwoman." The words landed like a bomb. The silence that followed was deafening. Langford's face went from confusion to disbelief, his eyes darting between the envelope and the stunned faces around the room. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. His hands were shaking slightly now, as if unsure whether to reach for the envelope or to throw it across the room in fury. The executives sat frozen in their seats, their shock palpable. This was not the Anna they knew, the meek, polite waitress who had served them their meals. This was someone else entirely. Anna calmly slid the envelope toward Langford. She didn't need to explain further. The official stamp on the letter was enough. Her father's signature was there, confirming what Langford could no longer deny. Langford reached for the envelope, his fingers trembling slightly as he opened it. He pulled out the letter slowly, scanning the words, his face gradually paling. The letter was brief, to the point, and undeniable. It was official. Anna Carrington was now in charge. The room remained still as Langford read the letter. His hands shook as he folded it back up, the weight of the moment finally sinking in. "What is this?" he finally asked, his voice rising with frustration. He glanced around the room, looking for support, but no one spoke. Anna didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stood her ground, her gaze steady. The years of mockery, the insults, the dismissive comments, all of it had led to this moment. Now, Langford was the one who had to answer. "Mr. Langford," Anna said, her voice firm, "you've lost your position. The board has been informed, and I will be taking control from here on out." Langford took a step back, his face flushed with anger. "You can't do this. You have no idea what you're doing." His voice cracked, the cocky bravado he'd once worn so easily slipping away. "I know exactly what I'm doing," Anna replied coolly. "I'm saving this company from your incompetence, from your arrogance. You've lost touch with what really matters. And now, it's time for someone who understands the value of this company to take charge." The executives, still in stunned silence, exchanged uneasy glances. They were witnessing the collapse of Langford's empire, but no one knew how to react. Langford's anger surged. "You're nothing but a waitress. You have no experience. You have no right." "I have every right," Anna interrupted, her tone sharp, her eyes never leaving his. "I've been preparing for this my entire life. You never saw me for what I am. You saw me as an employee, a servant. But I'm more than that, Mr. Langford. I always have been." The finality of her words hung in the air, and for the first time that night, Langford faltered. His eyes darted around the room, searching for someone to speak, someone to challenge Anna's words. But no one did. No one could. His face twisted in disbelief as he tried to regain his composure. But the room was no longer his. It was Anna's. The power dynamic had shifted, and Anna had done it with a calmness that made her even more dangerous. Langford's empire had crumbled, not with a loud crash, but with a single statement, a declaration that left no room for argument. The silence was broken only by the soft rustling of papers as Langford clenched the letter in his hand. His mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out. His reign had ended, and Anna was now the one who held the power. Anna stood tall, her gaze unwavering. "This meeting is over," she said, her voice final. And just like that, the room was hers. The room was still. Langford's chair scraped against the floor as he stood, his face contorted with rage. Without another word, he turned and stormed out of the room, his footsteps echoing through the silence. The executives, who had once hung on his every word, remained frozen, unsure of what had just happened. Anna's gaze followed him, but she didn't flinch. She wasn't worried. She was ready. As the door slammed behind Langford, Anna took a steadying breath and turned to face the board. Her eyes scanned the room. Those who had once mocked her now looked at her with something different. Fear, perhaps. Respect, certainly. She had taken control, and they knew it. Anna walked to the front of the room with measured steps, her presence commanding attention. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to raise her voice. The silence in the room was loud enough for her to be heard. I know many of you have doubts, she began, her voice calm but firm. Doubts about my ability to lead. About my background. But that's precisely the point. My father built this company on values that Langford and his cronies abandoned long ago. It's time to return to those values. The board members, once dismissive, leaned forward now, listening intently. Anna's words were not just rhetoric. They were a promise, one that carried the weight of the company's future. I will not stand for unethical practices. I will not tolerate the kind of arrogance that has been allowed to fester here, she continued. We are here to build something lasting, something that doesn't just profit at the expense of others. We are here to be accountable to our employees, to our customers, to our community. That is the legacy my father left me, and that is the legacy I will honor. There was a shift in the room. Some faces were filled with fear of the changes she promised. Others were skeptical, still clinging to the old ways. But all of them were listening now, something they had never done when Langford was in charge. Anna's eyes swept over the board, and she could see the cracks in their confidence. They had once mocked her for her appearance, her position, but now they could see that she was more than a waitress. She was a force in her own right. And to those of you who believed I was nothing more than a figurehead, I hope you realize now how wrong you were, Anna added, her gaze steady. I didn't come here to take a backseat. I came here to lead. The room was silent as Anna finished speaking. She didn't wait for applause, but there was a shift in the energy, a change that couldn't be ignored. The old order was dead, and a new one had begun. From the sidelines, the staff, who had been quietly observing, erupted into quiet support. They weren't loud, but their eyes followed Anna's every movement. There were nods, subtle smiles. They had witnessed her transformation from a mere waitress to the person now in control of the company. In that moment, they knew she had earned her place. Anna took one last look at the board, her heart steady. Now, if there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned. She turned and walked toward the door, her head held high. As she passed through the entrance, the staff parted to make way for her. For the first time, they saw her not as a server, but as the leader of the company. Anna's steps were confident, each one a reminder that the power she held was not given, it was earned. She had fought for it. She had waited for it. And now, it was hers. As she stepped outside into the cool evening air, the world seemed different. The streets of the city stretched out before her, no longer as a distant dream, but as the reality she was shaping. She wasn't a waitress anymore. She was the new face of Langford Holdings. And as she walked away from Verité, the restaurant that had once been the stage for Langford's mockery, Anna knew this was only the beginning. The audience was left with a sense of quiet satisfaction. They had witnessed a transformation. One that defied expectations and challenged the very foundation of the company. But most of all, they had witnessed a woman who had risen above every obstacle, every insult, to claim what was rightfully hers. Anna Carrington wasn't just the new face of the company. She was a reminder that power, no matter how hidden or underestimated, could always find its way to the surface. And in that moment, the audience was inspired, moved, and ready to take on their own challenges. If you enjoyed this story, ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing, heartfelt stories like this. Also, let us know where you are watching from, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think of Anna's transformation from a waitress to the new face of Langford Holdings? Do you believe in standing up to adversity like Anna did? Share your thoughts on Langford's downfall and Anna's rise. Don't forget to mention your favorite moment in the story. We love hearing from you.